Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to The Altar with me, your host, Colby Martin. So glad that you're with us. I say us because eventually I'm going to have my friend Timmy Dubs on the screen, and he's a little bit larger than that in real life. But so glad that you are with me and eventually us here today on The Altar. The Altar is a show that is dedicated to the idea of sacrificing bad beliefs for the sake of well-being. The altar, get it? Altar with an E, sacrifice, altar, change, shift. You picking up what I'm laying down here? And I go live every Wednesday at 2 p.m. for you on the YouTubes, like Shane, I see you there, and Brooke, I see you there, and Barry, I see you there, and you on the Facebooks, like you, Ben, and you, Mercy. So anyway, so glad that you're with us today, whether you're watching this live now or a replay later. Doesn't matter either way. I love you, and I'm glad you're here. Let's get into it. If you were with me a couple weeks ago, I remarked how I was wearing a linen shirt. I'm just proud to inform everybody I'm trying it out again. Got the linen back on. This one's a little darker than the previous linen shirt. And so I feel like it hides the wrinkles a bit more. So maybe it'll make it a bit more friendly for my aesthetics. Anyway, and it's helping me stay cool because it's warm with a silent B at the end down here in Southern California. Hey, who's with us today? Who do we got? Shane is here, although I clicked on Shane and Haley. So Haley, I guess they really wanted your name to be. What's up, Haley? So glad you're here. That was fun. We've got Ben. It's a little ridiculous how much I look forward to Wednesday afternoons. It's not ridiculous, Ben, because I look forward to it too. And if I do a thing, then that's makes it normal, right? Then suddenly it's less weird if Colby does a thing. Don't let me be your measurement of what is normal. Hello, Brooke. Glad you were here. Good evening to you. Also, a good evening to Zach from the University of Kentucky. You a Wildcat, Zach? I'm just kidding. United Kingdom. I know what UC stands for. Where Brooke is also at, also University of Kentucky. Gustavo, glad you're back. Thank you. Thanks for the shirt, love. Thanks for the shirt, love. Thanks for the love of the shirt was what I meant. Not so much thanks for the shirt, comma, love, referring to you as my love. I don't know you well enough to call you that yet. So, all right, off to a great start. Yes, Cheryl. Hi, Cheryl. So glad that you are with us. Cheryl, I think we've just finally became Facebook friends. Thanks for initiating that. I'm like, I've known you forever, but I'm not great at Facebook friends. Does that make sense? I think I have like 2,000 friend requests in there. And I'm like, I don't want to be friends with people that I don't know, really, is kind of my thing. I try to curate my social media life to a very specific and not be overwhelmed. Anyway, what else we got? Hey, Kevin Johnson. So glad you're with us. As I call you a resident Episcopalian, I hope you don't mind that I call you that. I know you're Episcopalian. I don't know if I can claim you as resident, but I keep doing it. Hi, Olivia. Good morning from the future. I love how worldwide this show is. I really can't wrap my head around it. Hey, let's do a little thing I like to call viewer sound off, which is where I offer you an easy question to respond to, just so we can continue to get to know each other just a wee bit. Easy question today. Easy question. You can do this. You can do this. Don't sweat. Don't panic, Shane. Easy question. Just tell me your top 3 favorite drinks. Let me know in the comment section. What are your top 3 favorite drinks? And take this any way you want. This can be like generic drinks, water, coffee, beer, or you can get real specific with it. Topo Chico, Sumatra, single origin blend from Indonesia, and maybe like a Belgian triple ale. You can get as specific or as general as you'd like. Lemonade, milk, tea. Although I don't really know. I'm with Ted Lasso on tea. Like, y'all just Sorry to our friends over and across the pond, but I'm with Ted Lasso on tea. Like it's just dirty water. Like you're just tricking us, right? I'm kidding. About 4 times a year, I enjoy drinking tea. Which there it was. See, our first Brit jumps in with Earl Grey tea, and then I go and talk smack about the tea. I'm good at this game. But then you also throw in vodka and Diet Coke. I like that. So, is vodka number 2 and Diet Coke number 3, or do you like to combine the vodka and the Diet Coke? Olivia's up. Pepsi Max for days. I don't drink soda, Olivia. So what's the difference between Pepsi and Pepsi Max? Let me know, because I don't know. I don't know the answer to that. Ben says Diet Coke, Chardonnay, and coffee. Ben, how do you take your coffee? Black, sugar, cream, drip, French press, AeroPress, Chemex, espresso. What's your pref? Shane says tea, coffee, and seltzer water. I like when someone like Shane doesn't discriminate between the tea and the coffee. They're like, look, it's both for me. Both hand. Shane, this might shock you. It won't shock you, but my wife, Kate, is the same exact way. Tea and coffee, both and. Both and. Oh boy. Hi, oh boy, from YouTube. Glad to have you. Coffee, water, and milk. Hashtag exciting. That's true, oh boy. That's true. You are bringing the thrills with your drinks. Coffee, water, and milk. I love it. So really, when you have coffee with a splash of milk, you are getting all 3 of your favorites into one. Meg. Hi, Meg. Glad to have you. Meg says sweet tea, Coke, and water. I like that. The sugar, and then just give me, I gotta balance out the sugar and the sweet tea and the Coke with just water. I'm gonna have some water right now. What do we got? Haley says water, mojitos, and Trulies. Trulies, those are like spiked seltzers, right? Is that right? Zach, that's totally fair, Zach. I respect your opinion. I probably am wrong. Most of the world would say that I am wrong. Again, I offended my UK crowd without even realizing. Well, I knew what I was getting into. Let's not deceive ourselves. Okay, Pepsi Max is sugar-free, Olivia says. Thank you for that. Gustavo says number 1, black tea. Number 2, Coke. Number 3, coffee. Number 4, Boost. I don't know what that is. Is that an energy drink? All right, Ben, you like your coffee black. Good. Just like me. Tea resolves all problems in England. I want to believe that, Brooke. I do. I want to believe that. Cheryl says Tazo chai iced tea. Now, I do like chai occasionally in some context for all you tea heads. Oh, Kevin coming in hot with the theological declaration that tea is the brew of God. Also vanilla latte with oat milk and gin and tonic. I'm with you on the gin and tonic, Kevin. I think we must have a schism and go separate ways with the other ones. Hi, Justin. Glad to have you here, bud. Spiked cider? Spiced and spiked. Spiced? Spiced spider? Not a spider. Not a spider. And homemade ginger beer. Justin, I'd like to try that. I would like to try homemade ginger beer. All right, everyone. That was the easy layup that we call viewer sound off, and you did it. I'm so proud of you. Now I'm going to go into the segment of the show that I call Perspective Shift. Why do I call it Perspective Shift? Well, because that's the name of my weekly article that you can get by going to colbymartin.substack.com. And then I like to hop on here on Wednesday afternoons and read a portion of it, or sometimes read the whole thing. I don't know. We'll see how far we get today, but this is called Perspective Shift. The title for today's article is called Discipleship in Progressive Christian Contexts. Is it a thing? Should it be a thing? Now, if you're new to the altar or you're new to me, then I do identify as a progressive Christian, contrary to what everybody on the internet would like me to say. They do not like that progressive can be a modifier for the term Christian, And they do not like that I call myself a Christian. So I make lots of people frustrated with this comment or with these identifying markers, and yet I continue to use them because until I have better terms, these are the ones that most clearly articulate who I am, how I move through the world, why I move through the world, etc. And I've been a pastor for, 20 years now, and in progressive Christian context for about 10. And I was reflecting, I reflect on this a lot, about what are some things from my previous background within the Christian world, which for me was conservative, Baptist, and then just sort of generic evangelical. What are the things that are, how do I want to say this, worth bringing forward into my new expression of faith or these new faith contexts? What are the things that still have value? What are the things that need to be completely just left behind and eradicated entirely? What needs to be tweaked? And so I've been thinking about this idea, this term discipleship, which, if you're like me and you grew up in any sort of conservative evangelical context, it's a pretty big idea. It's a pretty important term. It is used often. And then when you wander into progressive Christian spaces, you might notice that you don't really ever come across this term. It is one of the terms that I think has fallen by the wayside. To quote Bradley Cooper from Star is Born, by the wayside. That was kind of a little bit Scott Stapp Creed there. But anyway, so I'm thinking about discipleship. And anyway, here's my thoughts today. And you can read this by going to colbymartin.substack.com. Where you can read them all for, just by clicking on let me try it out, or you can put your email address in and then you're subscribed, boom, and you'll get these delivered to you, is what I'm trying to say. It's a newsletter. I don't think you know what a newsletter is. I'm treating you like you just found the internet. Welcome. You can sign up for my newsletter. And that's how that works. All right, let's get into this. Oh, Susan, you are never late. You are never late. You are like a wizard. You arrive precisely as you mean to. And Dwayne, thank you for participating in the viewer sound off by adding lattes, protein smoothies, and strawberry limeade. Solid choices, Dwayne Mitchell. Okay, I remember being in college, studying for my bachelor's degree in pastoral ministry and taking class after class designed to prepare me for the work of full-time ministry. Central to such preparation involved learning about the methodology and the necessity of, here it is, discipleship. Discipleship, to put it crudely, just to simply, is the process of training to become a better Christian. Now, I get that's overly reductive. There's a lot more to it. But it's also not entirely untrue. Like in the world of Protestant Christianity, especially in America's version, and especially within the evangelical world, it's not only possible, the thinking is it's not like you can be a better or worse Christian. It's actually like one of the goals is to Christian better, to win at Christianing, if you will. And as an Enneagram Type 3, I will, thank you very much. And the typical roadmap for this is as follows. First goal, you got to get saved, right? This is the biggest point of emphasis, is to save thine soul from the fires. And this is often done by saying a particular prayer or participating in specific rituals. Then once you're saved, which is to say your soul has been sort of stamped with the assurance that when you die, you'll go to heaven instead of hell. Once you're saved, the goal then becomes this idea of discipleship. First, you are discipled, you're the Padawan, and then you do discipling as the Jedi Master. And I suggest, and this isn't a perfect or exhaustive list, but I suggest there are kind of three main thrusts to discipleship. First, there's doctrine education, which is a fancy way of saying you learn to read and to understand the Bible, and you learn about Christian doctrine and maybe even how to defend it, like apologetics. So that's like the entry steps is great. So you want to be a Christian. Here's the things to believe. Here's the syllabus. Here's the textbook. I almost said textbooks, but let's be honest, you only get one. And then, so you start with education. And then number two, the spiritual practices. So discipleship is about regular engagement with practices like Bible study and prayer and worship and charitable work, volunteering, tithing, baptism, communion, etc. And depending on which tradition you are in or which denomination, you'll have different points of emphasis. And then the third kind of prong of discipleship is right living. So discipleship is about learning to live more holy. In theory, the better that you believe things and the more that you practice spiritual practices, then the less you sin. The more holy you are, the less you sin, the better. All right, so that's kind of the 3 points of discipleship, at least as I came to understand it and practice it for a while. And I'll say this, on a whole, it's not a terrible setup. It's really not. I'm not attacking the concept of discipleship here. I have attempted in my life to pivot a little bit away from sort of the cynical, attacky, overly critiquey of the world from which I came, still sort of critiquing when necessary, but I try not to now have so much like negative energy against it. So I'm not coming out against discipleship per se. There are aspects of it, yes, that I take issue with, of course, especially like the gratuitous emphasis on needing to believe, quote, the right doctrinal teachings. I would object to that. And certainly I object to a lot of the behavior modification that uses shame-based approaches to just make people feel like crap and then do better, like you suck, try harder. But when I step outside of some of the things that activate my frustration and trigger my cynicism with Christianity, when I step outside of that, I find that I'm not like, I'm going to outline here an approach to life real quick. And I'm not against this approach to life. This actually seems like a very reasonable and wise approach to life. And it looks a little like this. It starts with this awareness that my life or your life, if left unexamined, if left uncared for, just let be, then at best, I'll just sort of drift into a land of meh. And at worst, I will decay into meaninglessness. So if I just do nothing with my life, don't do any self-examination or don't really tend to any part of the soul, I'll just sort of meh. Therefore, number 2, as a result, I want to do something with I want to make purpose with my life. I want to find meaning and make meaning in my life. Number 3, Christianity, I would argue on its best days, has a pretty long track record. And I will even say it, wait for it, a successful track record. Don't throw your progressive stones. I spend enough time critiquing and naming all the ways that Christianity has gone off the rails and caused harm. And also, I think 2,000 years of a thing transcending time and culture and producing the sort of saints and enlightened figures that we have also is worth naming. So on its best days, Christianity has a long track record of offering this sort of meaning to life. So, because I was born a Christian in a Christian family and here in America, I'm interested in and I'm willing to set my aim at a uniquely Jesus-shaped way of living. Okay, so this thing called Christianity has a track record of providing meaning in life. I am curious about it. I have been sort of born into it. So yes, my aim is to figure out what it means and looks like to live in the way of Jesus. Therefore, I must learn and practice. And learn and practice, otherwise known as some sort of discipleship work. So that sort of outline of seeing your life, realizing you want something intentional from your life, setting your aim at a thing, and then learning and how to get to that thing is a thing that I am in favor of. And I think discipleship is a fancy, maybe overly religious way of putting word to that. And then I say this, I don't think I'm too off base in saying that anyone who's ever found deep peace and joy and contentment in life has likely done so as a result of some of that formulation that I just said. Obviously not always in the Christian/Jesus vein, obviously, but the same general outline of tending to the soul, caring to the soul, setting an aim about what you want your life to be like and learning about that and practicing and learning and practicing. In other words, people don't just coast through life and find, oh, I'm so just content and I have this deep peace. I just don't really think it works that way. So maybe you could say it like this: discipleship is simply the process of aiming our lives in a particular direction or path, maybe in this context, a uniquely Jesus-shaped one, and then doing the work required to hit that aim more often than not. All right. So I'm actually going to stop right there because I want to get on to the rest of our show. So if you want to go read it again, you can go visit colbymartin.substack.com. But in a sense, what I suggest is that I think within progressive Christian circles, there has been this reaction against discipleship. Again, for reasons that I totally understand and can articulate and have experienced myself, there's been a reaction against discipleship, but I think it has left a sort of a vacuum in a lot of our faith communities. Sort of a vacuum of like, okay, if not that, then what? What are we doing to tend to the soul? What are we doing to nurture the soul? What are we doing to live, as Aristotle says, an examined life? Where are we setting our aim? And are we investing our energies, our time, our resources into accomplishing that aim or moving in the direction of that aim? And so I wonder what that might look like. I asked readers if they had any thoughts of maybe words or terms to use other than discipleship, because I do wonder if that term has maybe not only lost its meaning, but just become too triggering for too many people. So somebody suggested spiritual formation, and I think it's a wonderful replacement. And I've seen and used that phrase in a lot of contexts. I think that makes a lot of sense. But yeah, this is one of the things I've been thinking about, is how in our progressive Christian spaces, do we still do something like discipleship, even if it is nothing like, or not much like the discipleship of our evangelical past. All right. So that is this week's perspective shift. Again, to read the rest of the article, just head over to colbymartin.substack.com, where you can sign up to receive the free newsletter or just read the ones that you want to read. Sound good? Wonderful. So glad you're here. Zach says, have you heard of street epistemology? I have not. Street epistemology. So epistemology is like how we know what we know. Street epistemology, that sounds really fascinating, Zach. I'd love to hear more about it. If you have a link or something you can drop in the comment section, that would be super helpful. Susan says, I think one thing that I would change from what discipleship meant in my growing up is that I choose at this time to live a more holy, whole, integrated, connected life versus a holy. Holy from my past doesn't mean what I think it needs to mean. I love that, Susan. That contrast of whole, W-H-O-L, which is said the idea that it all belongs, like integrating all the parts, as opposed to holy, H-O-L-E-Y, which is like set apart, where you are sort of severing and disconnecting and cutting off and removing. I mean, the term literally means set apart. So holy living in that way was like, you're almost disconnecting not only yourself from society, but you're disconnecting yourself from parts of yourself, all in the name of holy living. Whereas holy living, this sort of wholehearted approach where it all belongs and connecting all the parts and integration. I'm here for that. Dwayne asks, what would be my go-to source for defense of Christianity or apologetics? So Dwayne, this is an interesting question. And it's been in the last couple of months that I've thought about and talked to some folks about, like, are there resources within the progressive Christian movement or world that are akin to the apologetics of the evangelical world? Not that they're like 1-to-1 ratios, right? So you think of the apologetics of the old world, and you think of like, what's the guy's name? Like Lee Strobel, Case for Christ, or Josh McDowell, Evidence That Demands a Verdict. And you think of like just these real articulate defenses of this very narrow view of Christian theology. What is the way to defend a progressive Christian faith? I don't know. I don't know. I will say this, a quick plug for this glorious book, God Gets Everything God Wants by the Reverend Katie Hayes, who's going to be here on the altar next week. Ding. And I think while it's not explicitly an apologetics book, it also does a great job of sort of outlining the big idea of the Bible and does some good work with that. I've also got another one here. This guy was on the Kate and Colby show last week, Richard Beck, Hunting Magic Eels. Again, not explicitly apologetics, but it does outline ways like what does faith look like in a more progressive, inclusive, open, charitable way. Oh, I love this. Haley comes in with the affirmation. My spiritual life was so big in my life that I neglected other areas like physical, emotional, mental well-being. Yeah, like 100%. Thank you for sharing that, Haley. All right, let's get over to our guest who has been so graciously waiting in the green room. I told him it'd be like 20 minutes, and now I'm at 28 minutes. Sorry to make you wait so long. Welcome, everybody, to the show, the one and the only Tim Whitaker. Hello, Tim.
Hey.
It's really good to see you.
You too. I should warn you now, heads up. Where I live is getting the remnants of the hurricane. And so I do have a current tornado watch. So if my power goes out, I apologize in advance.
Oh, okay. Obviously, I'm not worried. I'm not worried about the show at all. Like if that happens, I don't care. I'm worried about you. Like,
nah, it's fine.
Well, it's just, are tornado warnings somewhat normal for you? Is this why you're kind of shrugging it off?
Well, it's a tornado watch, which is different. A warning would be, hey, something has touched down. A watch is, hey, the elements might produce a tornado.
Okay.
But we'll let you know. And it's a pretty wide area, so I'm not concerned. But if I suddenly cut out of nowhere, it's not that I don't like you. I do. It's that my power went out. So.
Should we start immediately praying for you if the power?
Yeah.
If okay, all right.
Please do.
Oh man. Well, hey Tim, it's good to see you again. You and I connected, I don't know, 6 months ago or so. Not too long after you began this, I will call phenom known as at the New Evangelicals, this online space for people who are in the process of disentangling themselves from a particular type of evangelical Christianity. And they find themselves and they find each other online in spaces like what you have created. And you and I connected a little bit through that. I think originally because you might have shared my Unclobber resource, or maybe somebody in your community shared it, but it doesn't matter. Anyway, point is, then we got to do the Kate and Colby show together. So if anybody's interested in that, Tim was on that a couple months ago. And then for this show, the altar, I'm like, because the thing here is the altar is all about sacrificing bad beliefs for the sake of well-being. And I thought, Tim Whitaker is an individual who not only has done that personally, but has now been a part of building this community where many, many people do it. So before we get into that, which I want to dig into a little bit with you, tell us just a little bit about what this new evangelical community is, what it and what it has meant to you in the past. What has it been, like a year or so?
It will be a year in December. So we're still
not even a year. You're still a little baby.
I'm a little infant. I'm still pooping my diaper.
Yes.
So
that's what they say about you.
Yeah. The New Evangelicals, the way we're kind of defining it right now is we're a community centered on Jesus and making more room at the table. And we're very focused on elevating stories and sharing perspectives and sitting and listening. That's kind of what we're doing. That could include stories from the community. That can include stories in current evangelical culture that should be paused for concern. That could be any kind of story in that world. So that's kind of what we do via Instagram, a Facebook community, a podcast, etc. So, there's a lot going on, and also Zoom groups as well. But that is the focus.
Why centered on Jesus?
I would say it's centered on the way of Jesus.
Mm-hmm.
You know, as we read, at least in the Gospels, some people read, the Apocrypha as well and incorporate that. But it's this idea of, I would say, a nonviolent subversion of empire is some of the idea behind it.
And that still has meaning and power for you.
It does, yes.
That's not a trap. I feel the same.
No,
I was just
no, for sure. It's weird, it is weird. Like you were talking earlier with like the discipleship point. It is weird leaving evangelical culture and realizing how dangerous and toxic so much of it is, but also realizing that like some of the same words do carry over, like Jesus.
Yeah,
but I think it's like understanding what that means and how the definition is really so different. I would personally argue more consistent, according to like his own words that we see. But yeah, for sure, definitely still centered on Jesus.
Yeah. Tim, give me a kind of a profile, a typical profile of the individual that finds themselves not just following the new evangelicals, but maybe participating in it in a particular way. What does a common profile look like?
They're deconstructing,
which means
they would probably say they are losing their faith.
Okay.
What I would say is they're having a crisis of theology.
Yeah.
They're for the first time being exposed to the wide river that is the Christian world.
Mm-hmm.
And they've just been taught their whole life that evangelicalism, specifically right-wing evangelicalism, is the only way. And all of a sudden they're thinking, actually, these theologies aren't making much more sense anymore. God's burning people in hell forever, but he's also loving. That doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. That kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
So people use the term deconstruction. You use disentanglement. That's a good one. Pete Enns calls it, it's very disorienting, a disorientation. So a lot of people who find my account are in some phase of that, whether it's the very beginning phases, which can produce a lot of anxiety and worry because your whole worldview is just turning upside down, all the way through, hey, I'm more comfortable now in this space, but I'm realizing how little I know that I thought I knew.
Yeah.
So that's a big part. And I would say a lot of them have also experienced anywhere from not minor in the sense to not important, but they would say minor abuse or gaslighting to major abuse and gaslighting in the church, and that's a very wide spectrum, but there's some element of church hurt involved.
Yeah. Yeah. And for this next question, I know it's going to be pure conjecture on your point, because I don't think you've done any sort of census with your community to have actual numbers, but you have some instincts that I have come to trust. What would you say? Give me like a breakdown of percentage of the folks who find you or find your community and follow and sort of identify in some way. What kind of percentage are people who were like, burn it all down, like the whole thing just needs to go, versus I'm here because I think some things need to be reformed and changed, but I don't want to leave or abandon or destroy the whole thing. Like there's still something in there. Do you know what I'm saying? Like and I don't mean it's not a clear binary at all, but it may be a spectrum of like burn it all down, like just total So maybe they're more evangelical. Maybe they, I love all these different terms that we're creating. They're helpful. I always say labels are super helpful until they're not. Eventually we'll like transcend the label, but they're helpful for a time. So how many within like the new evangelical community are of the opinion of like, nah, F that whole thing, burn it all down, versus let's try to reform and save the thing and redeem and reclaim maybe?
Well, it's very nuanced, very nuanced.
Yeah, okay.
It depends on the topic. So we can use Instagram as the main example of this. So, the way our Instagram account works is on most days, there's a topic in the stories. Hey, what are your thoughts on this? And then people DM us, and then we share as many as is reasonable to share.
Yeah.
So depending on the discussion dictates what the temperature is, right? And I found
Mm,
that I'll get messages from the same people who on one topic were kind of in the vein of burn it all down, and then in a different topic we're like, oh, actually, I have a fond memory of youth group, right? So I think it just goes to show, like you said, how complex
yeah.
this situation really is. There's layers more than binaries. It just depends. I think when it comes to the evangelical current American model that we're dealing with. Okay, so let's not say it's the theology of Jesus or following Jesus or even Christianity. You know, when it comes to the evangelical model that a lot of us have come from, a lot of us would say that reform and burning it are kind of one and the same. It needs to
Mm,
change. There
hmm.
has to be major reform in what the gathering looks like, in the structure of the gathering, in the theology. Whether someone says that's burning it down or reforming it, it doesn't matter to me. It needs to change, and that is an overwhelming, majority on in our community.
Yeah. I love that. And I love sort of imagining the space that you've created, which allows, I would assume allows people to have aha moments within their own self when, for example, on Monday they respond to one of your prompts with fiery burn it all down, and then on Thursday another prompt gets them to have that sort of like, oh, actually, like I think that's a gift that one of the many gifts you've given people is the chance to process things in a safe place in a way that can lead to some own like internal self-realization of maybe the whole thing isn't all bad, even though at times the feeling that it's all bad is completely valid, because of course it is, because of what all you went through and endured. Uh, yeah, I love that. I love thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
definitely trying.
yeah. Last time we spoke, Tim, you had just, I think recently, gone through an experience at the church you were sort of working / serving at, where they had asked you to maybe go away. I forget exactly how maybe they would have phrased it or you would have phrased it at the time. Like, because you had started to do this new evangelical work and it was gaining momentum and traction, and you were taking out some topics and some points of interest that weren't, super couth with those in leadership. And so that caused a parting of ways. So I kind of wanted to check back in with you. How are you doing with that, and how did that situation sort of find resolve, if it did?
Yeah, thanks for asking. Yeah, essentially what happened, for the viewers who maybe don't know, I was serving at a church for 6 years as like a full-time volunteer, very involved with leadership and the musical side, being a drummer, which you can probably see the drums behind me a little bit. And I was also part of a ministry that was a multi-church worship night, and I helped really grow that and expand that. And that kind of maxed out at about 60 different churches coming out to it. So I was really involved with that stuff. And essentially, when I started New Evangelicals, the senior pastor said, listen, we love you, you're great, but we really can't have you online with these public opinions because they contradict what I'm teaching from the pulpit.
Yeah.
And you can't be on stage and, it doesn't look good. And I said, well, I feel like what you're telling me is either to stop or alter the New Evangelicals or to step down from serving. And he said that is correct. So in that moment, over lunch, I said, well, I guess I'm stepping down. I'm reserved, I'm resigning effectively immediately. So that was what happened. And from there, it just wasn't really handled super great. Like, I found out a week later via text that the other ministry I was a part of, I was also resigning from that by me resigning from the church. Like, it was just very strange,
Yeah.
But anyway, I mean, to be transparent with you, I'm in counseling for church trauma, and that's been great. Just trying to work through the anger, because there are definitely days where I'm angry, and I don't want. There's a difference between anger and bitterness, and I think for me, for who I am, anger is fine, but bitterness is not.
Mm-hmm.
Bitterness will take root, and that's not that's not what I want to have in my head all the time. So I've been working through that and making strides. But as far as the relationships there, most of those relationships are totally gone. It is mostly just it ended on, hey, let's still stay friends. We'll keep in touch. The good old, wink, wink, nudge, nudge. Then you just don't hear from them again. So yeah, I've been mourning it. There are days where my wife will come home and I'm just on the couch watching old drum videos of me at that church, just watching them and reminiscing, like it's just part of the grieving process. But that's where I'm at now. I'm just getting through it one day at a time and moving on.
Thanks for sharing. My heart, it was hurting for you back when you were just going through that. And I've been thinking about you a lot lately and wondering how it's been going. I'm really proud of you for finding a therapeutic outlet / process for that. I think I wish I would have done that back when it happened to me twice. That was before I knew that therapy was so cool. I was still in the stigma days.
I've been there for a long time.
Do you have any, I don't want to say regrets, but do you look back on any of that sort of leading up to it? And do you have anything that you wish maybe you would have done differently or had gone? I mean, obviously I think you would have, well, I won't say obviously. Let me back up, because let me reflect my own story really quick, which is to say that when I got fired from my church in Arizona back in 2011, because my theology shifted on sexuality, at the time when I was in the elder board, sort of giving my account for my theology on sexuality, at the time I was of the opinion of, guys, just like I can keep doing my job and just keep this conviction to myself. Like I'm not out there teaching it. Or it's just in here. Right. I'm not doing anything to actively oppose the position of the church. So let's just keep doing this. Like we don't disagree on the essentials, right? And at the time that was my opinion, and I was hoping they would maintain my employment. Now, obviously that was driven by a ton of fear and fiscal insecurity for obvious reasons. But now looking back, I'm like, oh, thank God they didn't take me up on that. Like, thank God I didn't have to continue in an environment where I was so disintegrated, to go back to Susan's comment about holy living earlier in the show, so disintegrated from my internal convictions and my external expression of my faith. I wonder, so I made the assumption that might be the same for you, but I'm wondering now, and you haven't even had a year, and it often takes 2 years. It often takes 2 years for any sort of event like that to become just a story in your life, not the story of your life, where you start to feel like, oh, maybe I don't need to pull out the old videos and watch them anymore, So I know you're pretty fresh in it, but that is a question. I wonder if you're like, man, I wish I would have done that different or sooner, or feel like I'm bummed it went that way.
Well, I mean, I'm certainly bummed of how it went down. I'm a type 6, so I'm a loyalist, right, on the Enneagram, and really relational, and I'm very transparent. Like the person you're talking to now is the same person you would meet, when I'm downstairs with my wife watching The Office later on tonight. That's just how I am. Yeah. So it was tough, I think, really putting a lot of work into making, on my end, very genuine relationships, and maybe believing, wishful thinking, but believing that, but they know me. So like the relationship should supersede the belief, right? Yeah. Guys, I love Jesus. I affirm a resurrection. Like I'm in, right? Like these are the fundamentals, and to have that not good enough because of my social media presence. And for the record, I never talked about my church publicly. Right. And if I ever mentioned my church, it's always anonymous and always in a very public and positive light. Yep. I always praised my church for how they did things. So when everything went down, it really felt like, wow, it's just not good enough. I honestly think now, and like you said, it will take time to process all of it, but where I am now, it is the second most painful gift I've been given in my life. The first one was the terrible gift of anxiety and panic attacks and that thing that happened in my life 4 years ago that I never want again, but it changed me forever to be a better person. And the second most painful gift was what happened to me in May, because now that I'm out of evangelical church culture, especially that one, I can really be as honest as I need to be with the people who need a space to be honest. Like, yes. I don't owe my pastor an explanation for someone venting on my account that they're really hurt and they're effing, pissed.
Yeah.
Right. It's not for my pastor. It's for this person who needs this space to know that, yeah, you can vent out some of this frustration. It's totally acceptable. We get it. We've all been there. So that's the blessing, to use church language, right? I mean, that is the gift, is that now I'm really free to help shape the new evangelicals with the team that's working with me to be really in the corner of the marginalized in evangelical spaces. And that's very important to me.
Thanks for sharing, man.
For sure.
So almost a year ago, we're not quite on a year, you started this account, the new Evangelicals. And as I understand it, and as we talked about back when you were on the Kate and Colby show, there's a sense for you in which this idea of evangelicalism is worth preserving and or has its merits and or values. And so you're not necessarily, while you might resonate with and empathize with and have a lot of commonalities with kind of the ex-evangelical, which is to say almost like burn it all down, leave it all behind. You strike me as more of like a reformer, stay in it and redeem it sort of thing. And that is, that was you coming on the heels of a lot of Trumpism and how that impacted people's perception of evangelicalism. And now I've been watching your account and you have, you're just adding layers of dog shit to the pile of the stinky part of evangelicalism in our country right now, which has found itself aligned in this sort of anti-mask, anti-vax sort of just ignoring that there's a pandemic and totally. And resisting that there might be a potential way to engage with this that is more loving than what many of them are choosing. I guess what I'm wondering is, have you moved at all on your desire to keep the phrase evangelical? I'm not trying to take it away from you. I'm just wondering, how long can you stand under the weight of it?
The answer is no.
Okay.
And let me tell you why.
Tell me, baby.
I have something for you.
Okay, I'm so excited.
Can I show you this book? Am I allowed to do that on your show?
Yes.
There's a really great cheap book written in the 1960s called Discovering an Evangelical Heritage.
I love it.
Can I see that?
Donald Dayton.
It is like 130 pages. It is a tiny read. You can read it in one good sitting. The author starts out by essentially saying, in his day, in like the 60s, that evangelicalism has been hijacked by fundamentalism.
No
and that's
way.
a problem.
No way.
And we have to reclaim evangelicalism, essentially. I'm like, I love this guy. He's great. In the book,
60 years, Tim. Why are you still fighting?
Let me
Just
tell
let
you
it go or let it go. All right, go on. I'm with you. It's your moment. Convince me.
So, in this book, the author essentially says that early evangelicalism was entrenched firmly in the Wesleyan tradition, which was egalitarian. They were the first women to be ordained ever in church history in America. Were these early evangelicals? They were abolitionists. They were part of the Underground Railroad. Oberlin College, which was one of the colleges that Charles Finney, who I have problems with, but on this way I do not, Charles Finney started or helped launch, was part of the Underground Railroad, okay? Literally helping slaves get free. They were the first college to integrate with Black Americans. These guys and girls were like the most pro-feminist people you ever heard about. No lie, a couple that got married, the woman said, I am not signing a document that I am my husband's property. I refuse. We're not doing it. I'm that is badass. Right? It's like, I'm reading this book and I'm like, these are my people. Like, these are my social justice, woke warriors here. And they've existed in the beginning. Like, they were the ones pushing the church forward in their own way. Now, they were an unpopular group and they got swallowed up, by some larger denominations at some point. But my point is that early evangelicals, early ones, some of them anyway, were very in this line of, because of our love for Christ, because of our love for man, we want to help to reform society. I mean, they were anti-capitalist. They were pro-union. These are the early evangelicals. So that's why I'm not ready to give up the label. Essentially, I think here's what's happened, right? I think what's happened is that, and forgive maybe the grotesqueness of the metaphor, but hear me out. Essentially, the evangelical baby was born and a tumor from the beginning took over its face and it grew like that, and all we know is this tumor, and we have to do Operation Save the Baby and get all this stuff, all this, deadly stuff off of it as soon as possible. And a lot of us don't know the early evangelical history. We don't know because all we've seen is what we're seeing now and in the moral majority movement, etc.
Right.
But my goodness, like the history is there, and certainly there is something that is at least worth attempting to reclaim. Now, I'm not going to lie, Colby. It's a lot of work.
It's been testing your patience.
You see, has it ever? You see what I've been posting? I'm in these circles. 80% of white evangelicals, are obviously huge Trump people, but more importantly now, 1 in 4 say they will definitely not get vaccinated. And I think 2 in 4 say they most likely will not be vaccinated. So not only are they far right ideologically, they're also helping to keep the pandemic going in the name of God. So clearly I have major problems with our current evangelical, expression, but my golly, there is hope. There's hope.
All right. I'll allow it. I have not been moved in favor, but you have maybe halted my against just a wee bit. I'll allow it.
I get it, man.
Was it it was you that posted the other day, wasn't it, about the sort of the extended Martin Luther quote about the plague in his time?
Yeah.
Okay, recap that really quick for us, because I found that incredibly fascinating.
I mean, essentially, there's a quote, and this quote was unearthed last year. I just reposted it. But in 1527, there was a plague happening in Martin Luther's time. Obviously, Martin Luther is the father of the Protestant Reformation. A lot of Reformed guys love Luther for a lot of reasons, and so he has this quote. Can I
point out really quick that you said Reformed guys, and that tracks. That tracks.
I've also heard them called Theo bros.
I'm not sure there's a lot of women that are super amped about Reformed theology, but go on.
Yeah, right, exactly. Anyway, so essentially Martin Luther says in his book that during the pandemic, people who are, and I'm putting it in our language, but he says it in his own way.
Yep.
People who are not social distancing, who are not taking medicines, who are not acting as if, quote, the city is on fire and trying to put it out, are essentially tempting God. And Martin Luther goes so far as to say they're guilty of murder. I mean, that's Martin Luther's words, not mine.
He threw down.
He essentially, he threw down the gauntlet. That people who are not taking a pandemic seriously and are not thinking about their neighbor are on, their blood is on their hands, essentially.
Yeah. So
so I shared it because, again, I don't know. Well, I know where it's coming from, but this grip that we have of anti-mask, anti-vaccine for those of us who can take it. I know some of us are, have actual health conditions where we can't. But my goodness, it is just shocking to see the rhetoric coming out of some of these camps. It's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. It's weird. I don't know another way to say it than it's weird that there has, for just centuries, existed a type of Christianity that views their responsibility to society in that way, which is to say very limited responsibility to anyone other than my own self. When the founder of not the founder of the religion, that wasn't Jesus, but the figurehead upon which the religion was founded, could not have done more. I don't think he could have done more to emphasize that if you're going to follow me, it's actually about denying yourself. It's actually about dying to yourself. It's actually about loving your neighbor. And don't forget that. It's about loving your enemy. I just don't know that Jesus, had he thought to himself, all right, in 1500 years and then again in 2000 years, there's going to be these plagues. There's going to be these viruses that threaten to destroy millions of people. How can I word this in as strong a language as possible? I don't think he could have done it stronger than he did. So
Right.
how do we have this history within Christianity of, I would just argue, people that have missed it so egregiously.
Mm-hmm.
And then I'm like, well, I've missed a shit ton too in my own way. So I guess I can't point a lot of fingers, but whatever. For the time being, I'm going to point a really large and loud finger because it feels good.
Yeah.
Feels good to offload my own guilt onto others. Anyway, moving on. Tell me a bit, Tim. We've got a few more minutes together. Tell me a bit about, so the point of the altar, one of the themes of my show here is this idea of sacrificing bad beliefs for the sake of well-being. And it's about looking at things that we used to think or ideas that we used to believe and evaluating them and coming to the point of saying, you know what, this is something I want to lay down. This is something I feel like is not beneficial to me, to the world, to my neighbor. I'm going to take this belief that I used to have, and I'm going to leave it here on the altar for the sake of altering and changing and transformation and actually discovering flourishing and well-being and goodness on the other side of it. So is there something that you could share with us? And you can, if you want to fit 7 in, you can, or you can just pick one, whatever. What's a belief or two that you have in your spiritual journey thus far? Because we're always shifting and changing. Thus far, what's an idea or a belief that you look back upon and you're like, man, once I laid that down, once I sacrificed that on the altar of transformation, I can now see how it has led to greater well-being and flourishing in my life.
Well, I mean, how raw and honest you want me to be?
It's about it's you. The show is just the space. You are the one that gets to fill it with as much as you'd like.
Well, I like being honest. So I can tell you what I'm currently in the process of trying to put down.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm trying, and I'm in the process of putting on the altar the centering of evangelical theology, that, and also me, a white man, being at the center of that and knowing that.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been reading some really great books about just our history and, just colonization. I'm just realizing more and more how, like, even in my own subconscious, the centering of a white man is so key to evangelical theology, and how I played a part in that. And how for a long time I thought I had to have the answers, that people had to look to me as a leader to have answers to fix the problems. Right? I had to be trailblazing, and you follow me. But what I'm learning more and more is that if we're not centering the marginalized voices, the voices that aren't centered, we're gonna miss Jesus. We're gonna miss the divine. We're gonna miss what an upside down rule of God looks like, so to speak. And so I am currently in the process, and it will probably be a lifelong process forever, but I am in process of, as much as I'm able to decenter myself, whether it be on the new evangelicals or in my own life, and trying to be a better listener of listening to voices that I normally have not listened to before. There you go.
I love it.
That's what I got.
I love it.
It's true. I mean, it's the honest truth.
Yeah. Yeah. Have you, so follow up for that is, and I hear you say like, this is a newish for like, you're in process of it. Has there been something you can point to yet? Have you seen any indication of how doing that might lead to flourishing or well-being? Like, have you seen any fruits of that yet? Or is it still for you in this stage of discovery and learning and uncovering this apocryphal revealing of what has been covered?
Yeah, I think it's mostly the latter of what you said. Okay. I do think, though, there have been moments where I talked to a few people who hold a lot of influence in Instagram circles, who are marginalized voices, and I've had time to sit with them. And at the end of those times, I always leave just like full of, I'm not sure what the feeling is. It's just a sense of humbleness and a sense of, man, I just don't know shit, right? And like, there was something so beautiful for me to be a student and to say, yes, like, I have so much to learn. Thank you. Like, it's like, I guess as I'm fleshing this out, verbally, I'm learning how to receive in a way that isn't self-centered.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
It's like, wow, you just gave me a gift that, and I didn't even know I needed it, but this gift is so healing to learn that like there's different ways to view these things, and that I have a voice, I have a perspective, but I am not the voice, I am not the perspective. Mm-hmm. And that's what makes life just absolutely beautiful, right? That is the divine, when you're connecting with someone and you're like, wow, like this is just a moment here. This is what Rob Bell will call a holy moment, where like something happens in the space-time continuum that you just I can never articulate clearly enough, but it's like, yes, that snapshot, that whatever that was, and bottle that up, because that's a glimpse of the new creation one day. Like that's where we want to head. We want to keep going in that direction, right? So I think that's kind of the glimpse I've gotten so far, and I hope to get more.
I love that. Thanks, man. Yeah. Thanks for sharing. That's super cool. All right. Then the last thing I'd love to have you share with us is you are, with your new evangelical community and this movement, you are sort of, you're doing something new and exciting, right? You're on the precipice of a new thing. And so tell us about it before we go. Tell us what we need to know and how to hang out.
Well, if you want to look at like the full story, you can go to our Instagram and you can see the post. We released this video. It's about 6 minutes long. But essentially what we're doing is we're looking to move into the direction of a docuseries. And we have a thing we called Community Conversations. The goal is to start elevating stories that the church needs to hear, and the stories that need to be told. So we want to shoot on site people who have stories about real church hurt, about their experience in purity culture, about their experience deconstructing, about their experience being fired from their evangelical church, and elevating those stories to the forefront. So we launched that. We launched the amount of money we need monthly to make that happen, because we have to form a nonprofit first, and we have to get some things in place. We also want to shoot a pilot so we can get our feet wet with like what that looks like. But we definitely want to head in that direction. You know, our big overall, the big theme for New Evangelicals is story. How do we elevate stories that need to be told? Mm-hmm. That is the goal. And we do that in the stories on Instagram. We do it on Facebook. We do it in podcasts. And I think doing it in video form, cinematically, with like a documentary style, I think that is the future for us to continue to do that well. So that's where we're going. I
love that. So people go to your Instagram account is the best place if people.
That's the best.
Okay.
Because what we did was we shared the video, but also we always do Q&A in the stories.
Yep.
So we're answering questions about what we're doing, why we're doing it, where things are going, how it works. So it's completely transparent. Everything is wide open.
I love it. Well, Tim, I wish you all the luck in the world. I don't know my theology on luck anymore, where it sits, but I feel like it's still a good thing to wish people. And so if there's anyone to wish it upon, I wish it upon you. Also,
thank you.
Luck for surviving the tornado.
So far, so good.
The tornado watch, not a warning, a watch. I've learned those are different things.
Yes, they are.
And thank you. Thank you not just for hanging out with me this afternoon / evening, but thank you for saying yes to this work of theological rehabilitation, which is so much of the work that you're doing, and the space that you create, and the sense of belonging that you're giving people, and the sense of hope that they can still hold on to some things, and do it in a way that is more integral to what they believe Jesus really was about. And I think that is time well spent, and I hope you're getting physical therapy routinely for your thumbs, because I can't imagine how your thumbs must feel.
I got a wireless keyboard. It's all
okay.
Good.
Okay, wait.
That's what I use.
You can do the Instagram stories. You can type those so that you're not thumbing the stories. Oh, okay.
There's even a little slot right here where it goes. My phone goes. So
so you still do it on the phone, but you type with the key. Oh,
exactly.
Look at us, humans, and the things we can create. It's amazing.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
All right, Tim. Take care, buddy. Bye-bye.
See ya.
All right. So please, y'all, go check out at the New Evangelicals on Instagram, which I don't even think you necessarily need an Instagram account in order to go. You can go to Instagram.com/the New Evangelicals. I think you can do that and just view. But if you're on Instagram, go check out what they're doing and support it if that's something you also see value in. Hey, you know what I see value in? Wednesday afternoons with you. I do. I love this. I love this show. I love this time. I love hanging out with you more and more. It just means the world to me to have you show up. I love this. Haley, thanks for sharing. My mantra lately has been, I don't freaking know, and being okay with that, being comfortable with the unknown. Thank you so much for sharing. Next week, and I mentioned it earlier in the show, next week on the altar, I'm going to have my friend Katie Hayes. Look at that. Look at this is a pretty book, y'all. And I was fortunate enough to blurb the back of it. And it says, there are few people that I trust as much as Reverend Katie Hayes when it comes to understanding the heart of God and how to live out the kingdom. She just, to put it plainly, gets it. And then she shares that it with us in a way where we start believing we can get it too. In this book, Katie casts a vision for a loving, passionate, and persistent God so good, it's got to be true. So I love this book, and I really want you to check it out. And I love Katie, and so she's going to be on the show with me next week, so please come back for that. And then speaking of coming back tonight, the Dr. Reverend Michael W. Waters, best-selling author of books such as this children's book for beautiful Black boys who believe in a better world. And then he's got a brand new children's book coming out in October called Liberty's Civil Rights Road Trip, which is a fantastic book based on the true account of a road trip that Michael leads and his daughter Liberty went on with him a couple of years ago. Anyway, he's going to be on tonight with the Kate and Colby show. That's me and my wife, Kate. So that's 7 p.m. Pacific on YouTube and on Facebook. So please come and hang out with me tonight for that. Other than that, have a great rest of your week, everyone. I love you. Be well. Nourish yourself. Take care of yourself and take care of your neighbor. Okay, that's it. That's all I have. We'll see you next week.